Okay, we'll now call to order the Wednesday, March 1st Reno City Planning Commission. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Armstrong, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure thing.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Armstrong. Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
J.D. Draculich,
Here.
Harris Armstrong,
Here.
Peter Gower, absent at this time, Mark Johnson,
Here.
Arthur Munoz,
Here.
Sylvia Villanueva.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Great, thank you so much. We'll now move to agenda item number 3, which is public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for general public comment. We'll open up public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there is disruptive behavior, and you will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. With that, we did receive correspondence that was general in nature and not specific to any item on tonight's agenda. I do not have any requests to speak forms at this time.
Great, thank you. Would anyone in the public like to speak at this time? Okay, we'll close public comment and move on to item 4, which is public hearings. We'll start with item 4.1, case number LDC 23-00033, Golden Valley Commerce Center Major Site Plan Review. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening. Is that, yep. Got a PowerPoint, there we go. Good evening. For the record, Mike Ray of the Christie Corporation, here representing the project applicant. Also with me is the Don Smith, another applicant representative, as well as Jason Gillis with Tech Engineering, the project engineer. Is this the keyboard? Doesn't look like the keyboard's doing it either.
Try again, Mike.
There we go. So this is a request for a major site plan review to allow for fills in excess of 10 feet. Your notice does include residential adjacency. Staff determined that residential adjacency did not apply. However, we have applied the residential adjacency standards to the project, and I'll give you some more detail of that shortly. You might remember this site was before you a couple months ago for a zone change. It's on the south side of Golden Valley Road, just west of North Virginia Street, just over 6 acres. It's currently vacant. These are some views across the site. It is master plan industrial, and as you recall, we came in for a zone change to IC, which was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. I believe, losing my track of time, but back in December of last year. What we're proposing is 2 flex space buildings on the site. This is the site plan, and I'll go through some details exactly what's being proposed. It's just under 97,000 square feet within 2 buildings. It will allow for a mix of commercial and light industrial uses, no warehousing and distribution. In fact, if you look at the way those drive aisles are set up, they're not set to accommodate semi-truck traffic. They can't circulate. There's no loading docks to back into. These are flex-based units where you have a little roll-up door and an office showroom. A perfect example is a dance studio that would have their office in the front and the studio in the back, or a tile contractor that has a little showroom area with all of his storage within the back warehouse. The units themselves are only about 2,000 square feet apiece, to give you some scale. As I noted, that the request tonight is for fills in excess of 10 feet. The project is separated from the residential use by a 200-foot railroad right-of-way and a significant grade change. And staff has determined that based on the triggers for residential adjacency, this does not meet the residential adjacency requirement. As I mentioned, the units will include a roll-up door, but no loading docks. The project design itself is kind of counterintuitive for truck traffic. It really discourages it. There was a lot of concern that we heard when we spoke with some of the neighbors that this would be another Chewy building. It's really not comparing apples to apples. It's a fraction of the size. The building itself is only 19 and a half feet tall, so it's less than half the height of Chewy, well over less than half the height. The one thing I would like to clarify, the 24-hour operation is not proposed on the west side of the building. What we presented to the NAB and what the NAB was favorable to and what we spoke with some of the neighbors about is the western building that faces towards the residential areas would not have any 24-hour operations. The way that the condition is written, it's a blanket condition across the entire site. We would request that that condition be amended to state that no 24-hour operation would be permitted on the west side of the western building, and that any other 24-hour operations proposed within the center by a specific tenant would be required to come back before this board for a conditional use permit. And because we do anticipate, based on some of the users, a gym, for example. The other thing that we've heard a lot of demand for, just with all the industrial growth in the North Valleys and the 24-hour operations, is a 24-hour daycare type use. So that could potentially go in here. So we understand that, we don't want obnoxious 24-hour uses, which we would require that CUP to prevent that from happening. The fill area that's triggering this is actually less than 1% of the total project area. So it's just a small portion of the site that's subject to the site plan review requirements. The nearest residential unit to the west is 240 feet from the project boundary, and I'm going to have a cross section here to show you the relationship. But the finished floor of the building finished floor elevations of the buildings are 15 feet below the grade of the railroad tracks, and then the homes themselves sit 5 to 10 feet above that. And when you see the cross section, I think it'll make much more sense. So that grade change really does help with our buffering. You won't have headlights shining into windows. The homes will look well over the top of the building. So this is the elevation is really more of a scale or a kind of a massing of the building that we put together. It's kind of hard to see at this scale, but you can see the individual doors and then the showroom doors there. As you can see, the building is low. It's not a big warehouse building with loading docks and that sort of thing. So this is that cross section, and if I do have a pointer. So this is the parking lot. Here's our building. As you can see, we ramp up to the railroad tracks here, then obviously dip down for the maintenance road, and then this is the closest residence. So their fence, their property line is here. This is their patio area and the house. So they're looking, even if they're sitting on their patio, well over the top of our project. The other conditions that we kind of voluntarily agreed to is the increased landscape buffer along the western boundary, the prohibition on the 24-hour use on those western-facing units of the west building. Signage on the west elevation will not be illuminated between 8 and 7. The light fixtures, including the parking lot lighting, will not exceed the base elevation of the railroad tracks. That way we won't have any spillover to those homes. And those were all voluntary conditions that have been incorporated into the staff report. We do ask that the 24-hour condition be clarified if you're so willing. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hello and good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, Leah Brock, Associate Planner with Development Services, City of Reno. This evening, I am going to present 3 cases. This is the first of those 3, the Golden Valley Commerce Center Major Site Plan Review. We don't have our pointer. All right. The subject 6.08 acre site is located south of the intersection at North Virginia Street and West Golden Valley Road. For reference, you can see the subject site on the map there in yellow. Directly to the north of that is the Rayleighs directly to the north of that, across the freeway there, is the Rayleighs on North Hills. You can see North Valleys High School to the northeast, and to the southwest is Raleigh Heights Park. The subject property is located in the Industrial Commercial Zoning District. Key issues related to this project are overall site design and compatibility with the adjacent residential. The site probably does look familiar because you guys saw this a couple of months ago when the applicant proposed the zoning map change, which was approved by the City Council on January 25th. The master plan land use designation, if you remember from that, is industrial. Here you can see the overall site design. The proposed development does include an approximate 97,000 square feet commercial flex space split up into 2 buildings. As the applicant stated, the building height is less than 20 feet. The flex space concept will allow for multiple units, each with a front office and a showroom and a small warehouse space with roll-up doors. The larger building will be located furthest away from the adjacent residential zoning districts, and access to this site will be provided off of Golden Valley Road. Due to the existing topography, a small amount of fill area in excess of 10 feet is proposed on the northeast portion of the project. You can see that in the pink there on the screen. Keep in mind that this is less than 1% of the site, and the maximum fill there is 10.3 feet. Regarding residential adjacency, which I just want to clarify that it is not subject to the standards in Article 14 of Reno Municipal Code, because that states that it has to be within 150 feet of a residential zoning district. Because we have the railroad right-of-way in between the residential and this site, that's 200 feet. So technically, they still have to apply for the site plan review for the residential adjacency, because adjacent is considered with the right-of-way, the railroad right-of-way, but the actual standards that would be applied for residential adjacency in Article 14 do not apply. So just to clarify. Back to the residential adjacency, the main concern cited by the members of the City Council at the January 11th meeting was the 24-hour operation that's allowed in the industrial commercial zoning district. I do want to clarify, however, that the only 24-hour operations that would be allowed by right are manufacturing and processing, or storage, distribution, and warehousing. Any other uses within the industrial commercial zoning district still require approval of a conditional use permit if they are between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. So regarding what the applicant was saying about a potential 24-hour daycare or possibly the gym, those, even if we allowed the 24-hour uses, those would not apply to those uses. Those uses would still have to come forward for a conditional use permit. So condition number 5 is limiting the hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. But again, that only applies really to the manufacturing or processing and storage, distribution, and warehousing, because those are the only 2 uses that would be allowed for 24 hours. That's okay. There we go. Condition number 6 prohibits residential occupancy. That particular condition was added in at the recommendation of code enforcement because they have had an issue with people converting these flex unit spaces into residences and illegally converting them into residences and living in them. So they asked that we add that in. And then condition number 7 is the standard condition that we apply to everything with residential adjacency that limits the hours and days of construction. Regarding noise, lighting, and screening, condition number 8 requires that there be no truck idling on site, and we have to have signage there to show that. Condition number 9 is related to lighting. Prior to the issuance of any building permits excluding grading, the applicant shall have plans approved demonstrating that all exterior site lighting utilizes certified dark sky lighting techniques, and that lighting shall be dimmed by 11 p.m. Condition number 10 requires that light fixtures on the south and southwest, which are the two sides that are adjacent to the residential, do not exceed 12 feet in height. Condition number 11 requires that illuminated signage facing the residents be off by 11 p.m. And condition number 12 is requiring the screening, and it's that the applicant shall screen the development from the residential zoning districts with a minimum of 10-foot columnar evergreen trees planted 15 feet apart. Staff has reviewed the findings and recommends that the Planning Commission approve the major site plan review subject to the conditions of approval listed in the staff report. That concludes my presentation. The recommended motion is on the board, and I am available for questions. Thank you very much.
Go back to the commission for disclosures. We'll start with Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Johnson previously visited the site.
Commissioner Villanueva, no disclosures, and I was not at the last meeting where this applicant was in front of this commission. Thank you.
Commissioner Draculich, familiar with the site.
Commissioner Armstrong, I read and received emails, and I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm familiar with the site. And is there a way we can get a little bit of volume? I can't hear the other commissioners. Thank you.
Commissioner Valto, read and received emails, familiar with the site. Okay, we'll now open it up to public comment. When I open up public comment, are there any requests to speak forms?
I do not have any requests to speak forms for this item. I don't have any correspondence or voicemails for this item either.
Okay, would anyone in the public like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Turn to the commission for questions or discussion. Commissioner Draculich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, maybe for Leah, I just wanted to understand kind of what you're ending there. In regards to the applicant's request to have the west side of the property 24/7, help me out. He wants to amend what we have in front of us, a potential condition change. Are you okay with that? It just wasn't in the report? Because the way you made it sound is that anybody, okay, go ahead if you want to explain further.
Staff does recommend that the Planning Commission approve what is in the staff report, which is restricting that 24-hour usage. But again, I just want to point out that the only two uses that would be allowed for 24 hours is manufacturing and processing and storage, distribution, and warehousing. So the applicant or any potential applicants can come forward with any use and say, hey, we'd like to do this 24-hour, and they have to apply for a CUP, and they'll come before this board, and it would be up to the purview of this commission to approve that use on this site.
Okay, that clarifies what you were saying. Thank you. Mike, if you want to jump up and help me be clear.
If that's the interpretation of the condition, we're absolutely 100% okay with it. It's our interpretation of the way it's written. It says no 24-hour use, like you couldn't even ask for a CUP to do it. So we just want to make that clarification.
Sounds like we're clear then. Yep. Thank you. No more, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Discussion? Commissioner Munoz?
First off, I just want to commend the developers for what they're doing here and not taking up more commercial space and putting apartments on it. So we've been seeing that a lot up there. So I do appreciate this. This is what the North Valleys is asking for. I understand when this came before us before, there was definitely some concerns from the neighbors there, but it sounds like it has been addressed. And so I do appreciate what's going on here, and I think this is a good project, and I can make all the findings, so.
We have a motion.
I actually had a real quick question.
Oh,
but
please.
I got the discussion jumped in just a little too quick for me. Just Mike, real quick. It didn't come up as part of the presentation, but I'm thinking there's two entrances in off of Golden Valley Road. One of them is gated emergency access only, the northern one.
They'll both be open access to. One is obviously more of a secondary access, but they will both be open to.
Your engineer's creeping up behind you.
Nope.
For the record, Jason Gillis, Tech Engineering. Yeah, no, that entrance that's closest to Virginia Street, that is purely for emergency vehicles. It would be gated.
Okay, that was, I wanted to clarify that just from a traffic standpoint. They seemed awfully close to each other if they were both in and out. So if that one's gated, then I'm okay with it.
It's always good to have the smart guy around. when you-
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just needed that clarified before the motion.
And I just have a quick question for staff, if I. Okay, so I wasn't here at that last meeting, so I'm playing a little bit of catch up. So it was converted from, so there was a zone change, it was mixed use or to industrial commercial, or what was it? Okay, so what's surrounding it? Is it all industrial surrounding?
No, so everything that's surrounding the parcel is mixed-use suburban. The issue is that in 2017, when the land use designation was applied to that area through the new master plan, that whole area was designated as industrial in the master plan. So the mixed-use suburban zoning district doesn't conform to the industrial land use designation. So when the applicant came forward before, all they were doing was requesting to bring the zoning district into conformance with that by switching it to IC
Okay, from MS.
from MS.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Moon, for the record, thank you, Mr. Chair. Case number LDC 23-00033, Golden Valley Commerce Center Major Site Plan Review. Based on compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the major site plan review, subject conditions listed in the staff report, and I can make all the findings.
Great, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Draculich, I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Good luck. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 4.2, case number PAR 23-00020, Talus Valley Phase 2, parcel map number 5. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Derek Kirkland with Wood Rogers. I'm representing the applicant for Talus Valley tonight. So before you, we have a parcel map for plan areas 13, 14, and 15. And I'll get into a little bit of some of the past approvals for Daybreak, or what used to be formerly called Daybreak is now Talus Valley. And so many of you have seen it before. It's been back for a lot of tentative maps. Most of the area where we have the project area down there to the south is what we refer to as the town center, has been approved tentative maps pretty much for that whole area. There is a section in the PUD, which brings us back tonight, is in order to basically create those parcel lines for those villages, we are allowed to process multiple parcel maps. However, we do have to come back to Planning Commission, which is why we're here tonight. And so just a little bit of history. So the Talus Valley, PUD was approved for 3,995 units. As of today, there's 1,295 approved through the various tentative maps that we've brought back over the past couple of years. There's a substantial amount of open space that's part of the PUD, and there's a lot of different things, including reestablishment of Thomas Creek, and some of the different multimodal connectivity and just some of the transportation stuff that are all worked out. And you'll see as part of this parcel map, all that stuff is still intact. So again, going back to the approved PUD, section 2.8 is what basically spells out that we can approve, or we can bring sequential village parcel maps forward. And really, we've kind of parcel map basically all of the town center, which is that kind of lighter area to the south of the project area, where we came through with tentative maps, and then we basically parcel mapped all those villages so that the developer can sell those to more merchant builders. And so we've had several approvals. Most recently was about a year ago for the last portion of that. So that what we're here for tonight is basically 13, 14, and 15, which involves some commercial, some multifamily, and actually the elementary school. And the elementary school is really what's driving this parcel map tonight. As part of the PUD, we had to have a series of agreements, and one of those was with the school district to identify some of those different school sites, one being the elementary school. And so in order to do that, part of the agreement was to go through a whole process with them. And so we've worked really closely with the school district over the last year to kind of identify the site. And where we're at right now is basically creating that parcel for them to purchase. And we'll also create, as part of that, parcel for Village 14 and 15. And then there'll be a large remainder parcel that will be left for future parcel map. What I have up on the screen now is very conceptual, other than the school, because we had worked out a lot of design details with the school district in order to kind of lay out that building and just understand how everything's going to work so we can create an accurate parcel for them. And again, this is the last parcel map for the Village Town Center. And so what we're looking at is about a little over 7 acres for that parcel number 13. And working with the school district, part of that agreement required us to coordinate with them to come up with the design. And then we submitted a letter with that, and then this was all part of that part of the application process. And then Washington County School District recently submitted a letter saying that they approved of that parcel. And what the step 3 process where we're at tonight is requesting the parcel map to actually create that parcel so that the developer can work with Washington County School District to for the purchase and sale agreement and actually sell the school district the parcel for that. So again, we're basically taking a large remainder parcel that was created from the other parcel maps in the town village center, and basically creating 4 new parcels, or 3 new parcels and another remainder parcel. And really our whole goal of tonight is really just to create that Village 13 parcel so that we can move forward with the school district on the purchase and sale agreement. A little bit of background of this area, and you've seen some of you have seen a lot of this with the tentative maps that we brought forward. So with the tentative maps, everything south of 13, 14, and 15 has conditions to build all the backbone roadway. It has conditions to put in traffic lights at South Meadows Parkway and on Veterans Parkway. So all those are planned. We actually have backbone infrastructure in to the city right now for that. Also, we have final maps for villages 18 and 19, and we're continuing to work on the town center west, or east, which is the basically 16 and 20, and then obviously working with school districts on parcel 13. So a lot of connectivity. There is a shared use path that runs on 2 sides of the school. And then also backing up just a little bit here, you can see 27. We actually had a minor PUD amendment in recently, which was approved to actually move the park to Village 27, close to Village 13, so that the school and the park were in close proximity. There's a lot of benefits. I think the school district liked that, the city staff and park staff really like that, and so that gave us a huge opportunity for this area. And so you'll see as part of that is the park there, and the connectivity with the trail system provides a lot of synergy with that school parcel. But again, the PUD requires us to do all this transportation stuff, and that'll all get done. This is literally just creating the parcel, and we're continuing to work with the school and iron out the details of the purchase and sale agreement for how all that will get done. But most likely, most of the villages will come in first before the school actually moves forward with their construction. This area, so as you know, the PUD requires a lot of grading. It requires some the conditional letter of map revision. Some of this area, as you can see on the left, is within a flood zone, and so as part of the overall PUD, we've been working close with FEMA and also the Army Corps through. We do have from FEMA now a CLOMAR, which has been approved, and then the 404 permit with the Army Corps is very close. There's just a couple minor things that they're working through, but the general concept for the mitigation plan, which realigns and kind of restores Thomas Creek, all that's been generally approved and is kind of working through the final steps of that process. So that's all I have for my presentation tonight, and I'll be here to answer any questions that you guys have. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Derek. We have a presentation. Brooke?
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Brooke Oswald. I'm Associate Planner with Development Services. I want to thank the applicant's representative for doing a real thorough job on kind of explaining the project as a whole and getting that over to you. I know there's a few people that are newer here. Mark, I think, has seen this from the very beginning. So mine will be sort of short and sweet as we go through this. That location, as we look at that, let's see if we can get the larger location is along Veterans Parkway there. You can see the effluent pond up to the left of the orange triangle, the large storm water detention directly to the south of the subject parcel. Let's see if I can advance. Good. Oh, so, and then the lower blue arrow there, that is the intersection of Steamboat, or of South Meadows Parkway and Veterans Parkway there. Come in a little bit closer so everyone can get their bearings. Whoops. Once again, we have the dimensions on there. You're seeing the other middle school site, as was mentioned tonight. We're anticipating another school site up in the yellow eastern portion of that. Additionally, on this project site, adjacent to it on the northern side, we have another elementary site. Looking at the overall master plan and zoning, it's on that PUD zoning. Within that handbook, it does allow what they call them village parcels. We've called them super pads. What that allows is them to come in and create these parcels after they've created tentative maps. So why we have some limitations on that, why we only allow 4, is so someone can't come in and start to create basically a tentative map out of parcel map situation. So state law basically says you can do this, but you need to come to a public hearing. The findings are very similar or the same as a tentative map before tonight. So in many ways, you're processing what is a tentative map through this process. We call it a sequential parcel map. The reason we allow 4, but they have done, within 5 years, they've subdivided a number of other parcels below. So these 4 are laid on top of that, and hence our hearing. So it's the approximately 175 acres. And as you can see, we have the creating 4 total parcels. So we have the larger remainder parcel and then the 3 parcels directly related to those villages. Once again, we have the larger parcel and we're subdividing that into 3 more parcels. And then this is just an overview, once again, as we look at those overall villages and where those are in general, what's been done. We have done tentative maps on the yellow, all to the right of the project. As was mentioned by Derek, tentative maps have been on that main village section related to this parcel, and we have not seen any related tentative maps on the northern portion of this as we move forward. With that, I'll leave you with a recommendation for approval. Staff could make all the findings, and there are very limited conditions associated with it as coming through the parcel map process. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll come back to the commission for disclosures. Start with Commissioner Munoz.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm familiar with the area.
Commissioner Armstrong, read and received emails, and I am familiar with the area.
Commissioner Draculich, I'm familiar with the area.
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with the area.
Commissioner Johnson, I have a question for legal. The firm that I work for actually would be involved in the design of the elementary school that would be going in here. So I'm not sure, other than disclosing that, or do I need to recuse from the disclosures process?
Disclosure's fine.
Okay, so disclosing that the firm I work for designs the elementary schools for the Washoe County School District. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Velto, I am familiar with the area. We'll now open up public comments. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
I did not get any requests to speak forms for this item. I don't have any correspondence or voicemails to play.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Back to the commission for questions of the applicant or staff. Or a motion. Commissioner Munoz?
Sure, I'll make a motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Munoz. In the case number of PAR 23-00020 Talus Valley Phase 2 parcel maps number 5. Based on compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the sequential parcel map subject to conditions, and I can make the findings.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Armstrong, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Good luck with your project. We'll move to item 4.3, case number LDC 23-00045, Peavine Substation. We have a presentation from the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I have to turn it on? Hello? It's red. Does that mean it's working or it's not?
Red is good here.
Okay, well, it's the opposite of how I feel, but Mr. Chairman and Commission members, my name is Mark Sullivan. I work with NV Energy. We have reviewed the staff report, and I think they did a pretty comprehensive job of their analysis, and we agree with all those conditions. And what I'm here to talk to you tonight about is Peavine Substation. Do I control the slides? Oh, I can't believe somebody trusted me with this. Catch me before I leave, because I'll probably try and leave with it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the substation need. And what you have in front of you, if you look at the very top of the map, you'll see it's an overhead shot of the area. That's Silver Lake Substation. It's right behind JCPenney's out in Stead. And then down at the bottom right-hand side, you'll see Valley Road Substation. Those are the two substations that feed this area. And you'll see off to the left, kind of the second little box there talks about the proposed substation location, kind of a 30,000-foot view. And then also that blue or greenish line there that runs out there, that's the 141 transmission line. It's a 120 kV transmission line, and that's the line that we plan on tapping into. Where it comes into contact with the substation is right on Old 395 or Virginia Street. This is an overview of the substation site. It's a 10-acre site. We're going to use a substation is about 400 by 400, so that's more like a little more than 3.5 acres. I think it's 3.67 acres. That red line that's running down Virginia Street there, that's the 141 line. And what we do is we tap into that line with those blue lines that pulls that line into the substation. And so there's two poles that you'll see on the elevation drawing. One, this is oriented north, is at the top. So on the left-hand side, there's a pole, that's the west side. Then there's also a pole on the right-hand side. And then it exits back out. When it comes in the substation, there's a couple of, I'll show you those in the elevation drawing also, but there's a couple of portal structures. It comes in, goes into a transformer, turns it from 120 kV transmission into distribution. The yellow lines there are two access points into the substation, and the green line is the access point coming off of Virginia Street. And that's one of the areas that you'll see that they covered in the staff report, but we're going to pave that section of road to provide, starts and stops going on Virginia Street. There's not a lot of traffic there now. That road is actually called Peavine Peak Spur Road, which if you look right to the south of our site and to the west of our site, that's a railroad track, so I'm sure that's why it was called that. But we're going to pave it so people have access, both for taking off and getting out in front of traffic and then also stopping. Like I said, not a lot of traffic unless you're in front of Chewy's and you're 5 or 6 pickup or trucks. I don't know what the deal is with that. There's like loading in the street, right? There's like 5 of them. I drive around in the dirt just to get to the site. Then come in the other direction, there's another truck. And there's like 3 that I can see going up around the corner. I heard you talk about Chewy. I guess you guys already know there's a problem, but I never seen anything like that where they load in the street. So this is an elevation view. And so what we're proposing is, and those are the transmission poles where the fold comes in and then comes back out of the substation. And so what you're looking at there is a block wall. What we're proposing is do a split face block wall around the site with some kind of contrasting color. Maybe it would even be smooth block to give it that contrast and a little bit of definition difference. And what you see there is the substation equipment. The top of that substation equipment is about 22 feet. It's called the buswork. This is what a substation looks like, and I did this for illustrative purposes because we don't actually have the substation built. But if you look over on the right-hand side, those are the portal structures where the transmission line would come in. And then on the top, and then the site where we're proposing is 45 feet tall, those are. And then the masts that are on top of them are actually lightning arresters. And so if lightning were to strike the sub, it actually hits a lightning mast because that's the tallest thing in the substation, and then it goes to ground, so it doesn't do any damage. So overall, you got about a 60-foot height there. There's no water on the site, so we're proposing to take a little bit of a difference of approach here, and you can see some of the landscaping up in the top portion, which we'll see on another slide, but that's the native landscaping or native type shrubbery that's existing on the site, which we would propose to reseed and native seed and put it back on the site. Down the bottom right-hand side are some of the things we kind of robbed that from the NDOT. I don't know if you guys have seen some of that. They have some of that stuff out in Carson City. They have it all over the state. There's actually a tree that I drove by yesterday. It was on 395 going north if you get off, like if you're going to go to Costco. And on Plum Lane, just on the left-hand side, if you're going to turn west, there's a couple of trees, 2 or 3 there. I mean, the on-ramps and off-ramps, you'll see various things around. I mean, the only comment that we received when we took this to the NAB was that they didn't want a goat out in front of the, that was the comment we got. Down the bottom left-hand side, you can see, I think the bottom left, far left is our bottom, the one on the very bottom is the one that's lit up by the sunlight, and it's easier to see. You know, it's got that color contrast with the ribbon around it, and gives you an idea of what a split-face block wall is that we're proposing. Excuse me. So this is an elevation drawing of some of the landscaping, and it's hard to see because the scale, we actually blew up some of the structures, the animals and plants and stuff, just so you could actually see them. This is just an idea of, where we could put stuff. I mean, actually, I think it's a little much, when you look at it, but that blue ribbon that goes around there, I mean, that's going to be, we're proposing that to be some dark rock. We did have some conversations with the staff. And we talked about bringing the rock down to the toe of the hill, so we don't end up with. We use soil stabilization, and the plants, the native seed, and the roots and stuff will hang on to the dirt on the side of the hill. Excuse me again. Again, you can see, the transmission work behind the wall, and then the 2 transmission poles. So this is kind of a close-up of the site. If you look to the west side, there's I believe it's Tumwa's water tank out there. We're right at the intersection of that spur road and Virginia Street. That green, or the bluish line again, is the transmission line. One of the beautiful things about this site is going in, you don't have any transmission lines, right? You have one pole coming in and one pole coming out. So, you got a few hundred feet of transmission line total. So it's kind of nice in that regard. If you look on to the east of our site, that's KG Walters. There's a construction company. They do sewer treatment plants, stuff like that. The next site up, I believe, is owned by the Krugs, which actually, that's a private road. And so we've been in discussion with them about paving the road. They don't seem too upset about it. They own a company called Advanced Asphalt. So I think they're asking me about the specs today. Well, what do you want? So I think that we'll probably be able to work an easement out with those guys for access without a problem. This kind of gives you an idea of the need that we have out there. This is a picture of June 2011. And you can kind of see some of the dirt work down on the bottom right-hand side. There's a couple other spots, one on the other side of the 395, one on the north side of Virginia there, where they're moving some dirt around, a little bit on the south side. And this is 10 years later. So you can see that there's a lot of growth out there. There's a lot more dirt that's getting moved. That stuff is built on today also. So what we have in our system is those 2 substations that are serving that area is they're getting close to their nameplate capacity, and we don't like to go over that nameplate capacity. So we're going to, that's why we're proposing the substation, is so we can offload some of that over onto this substation, and it'll carry us out for quite a while. A lot of people, you hear them complain about, well, we don't want to support growth. That was one of the comments that they made out in at that ward neighborhood advisory board, and I said we don't create we don't bet that we think something's going to grow. We're chasing load growth. So it's approved units that you guys have that are unbuilt. That's what we're looking at. And we're looking at the capacity that we have today, what the percentage of growth is on those systems, and how long it's going to last. And so we want this in by the summer, prior to the summer of 24, because that's when we predict that both of those substations will be at nameplate, and we won't be able to serve anybody else. And that's it for me. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I would point out that the NAB, they didn't have a lot of comments, and we were looking for opinions like the landscaping. We kind of like to see more of the landscaping in our substations go that direction, where there's not a bunch of vegetation that you got to take care of, and we're not using a bunch of water to try and water these sites. So I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on that. That would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bert, do we have a presentation?
You did, off you went. Once again, my name is Brooke Oswald. I'm Associate Planner with Development Services. Case before you tonight is the Peavine Substation. What we're looking at we're in for a conditional use permit. One is for the establishment of that major utility, that substation, and two is for cuts and fills. So we have fills of approximately 10 feet and cuts of about 20 feet on this. To go over the project location site, we are in the North Valleys along North Virginia there. The little white dot, you can see that's the Tumwa water tank. It sits on the hill. Coming a little bit closer, this sits right at the intersection of that Peavine Peak Road, which is an unimproved road. It's also not a city road, and the Virginia Street Road, and North Virginia Street. You're seeing a railroad directly to, on the bottom of the site there. We're seeing some other a Copart facility, which is basically a car wrecking yard. We're seeing some other storage units across the street. So major utility or industrial there. So we're not anticipating any direct impact from this project. Just once again, look at the railroad track. Looking at our zoning, this is actually in an SPA, that's that special planning area. This is a remnant from the Reno-Stead Joint Corridor Plan. We're currently, the county has sunsetted this. The city is currently working to officially sunset that. And we'd anticipate the zonings coming in to over-reflect. This is an SF8 zoning, that's single family, 8 units per dwelling unit. Major utilities are allowed within that with this conditional use permit. And we are seeing that general commercial across North Virginia, and then you can see that solid gray to the right there. That's industrial, and we're also seeing industrial. It's a unique little area there with the SF8, as we've seen that area drastically change over the last 10 years. Just to go over the request, the landscape is unique in this. We do have some conditions related to the fencing. We did allow them initially to have a semi-screen fencing on the rear, but wanted to make sure we did the slump. They are coming forward now, and they are proposing to do the entire slump wall around the entire project. Additionally, we have a condition that will require them to submit a landscape plan to the approval of the administrator. So we'll be working with it. I'm a landscape architect. We'll be working with our staff and stuff like that. This is unique, and RMC, Reno Municipal Code, does allow these utilities to use alternative buffering and screening because of some of the uniqueness of lack of utilities, lack of employees, a number of these things. And so this is one staff will be continuing to work out. They've thrown out some concepts, and we'll fine tune that on this. Additionally, we're not going to be seeing curb and sidewalk on this particular project. We don't have it in close proximity to this. Many of the uses are not driving that pedestrian use in this. We do see that improvement of this section of North Virginia coming in that 2031, 2050 timeline. And what we've seen with that is a lot of that's been accelerated due to that growth that we've seen out there. With that, I'll leave you with the recommended motion. Staff could make all the findings, and I'm available for questions as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Come back to the commission for disclosures, and we'll start with Commissioner Munoz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am familiar with the area. I don't think we had any other correspondence on this that I can remember.
Commissioner Armstrong.
Okay, I actually have a longer disclosure. Fellow commissioners, I need to disclose the fact that my employer, Estuary Power, has an ongoing business relationship with NB Energy. On this matter, I have sought guidance from the City Attorney's Office pursuant to NRS 281A.420, Section 4, subsection A. The law presumes that the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in the public officer situation would not be materially affected by the public officer's commitment in a private capacity to the interests of another, where the resulting benefit or detriment accruing to the other person is not greater than that accruing to any other member of any general business, profession, occupation, or group that is affected by the matter. Here, I have a commitment in a private capacity to my employer and a pecuniary interest in my employment. Item 4.3 is a request for a conditional use permit for the Peavine substation by NV Energy. The independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my situation would not be materially affected by my commitment to my employer, which has an ongoing business relationship with NV Energy, nor is my pecuniary interest in my employment affected by the request. Because this is not a clear case of disqualifying conflict of interest, I am making this disclosure but do not intend to recuse myself from this item. Please accept this disclosure and lodge it on the record for this meeting and subsequent meetings pertaining to this agenda item. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Armstrong.
Commissioner Draculich, I'm just familiar with the area.
Commissioner Villanueva, no disclosures.
Commissioner Johnson, very familiar with the area.
Commissioner Velto, same disclosures. We'll now open up public comments. Do you have any voicemails or request to speak forms?
I do not have any request to speak forms for this item. No voicemails and no correspondence at this time.
Thank you. Anyone in the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comments, come back to the commission for questions or discussion. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brooke, question. I was a little unclear in the staff report, and I think the applicant's presentation cleared it up. The requirement in here for item 10 that talks about the driveway approaches to the substation facility, in the document that was shown to us, that was the spur road from Virginia Street to the edge of the site, but not the driveways from that spur road into the substation that's required to be paved. Is that correct?
So we're looking at two things. So both of the driveways within are going to be required to be paved that lead into the thing. Along the spur road, which be that connection with Virginia, we required within our condition, it requires that they pave back a minimum of, I believe it was 50 feet on that. The logic behind that is it's dirt, gravel. We're preventing track out onto our overall road systems to knock a little bit of that off. And then also just to provide that additional traction as we're seeing those traffic volumes that someone making a turn out of there is able to move through there more easily than a dirt road.
Okay, so that is a little bit different than the image that's in the drawing that still showed it as a gravel driveway in. You're saying the condition means that they're both sections.
Both drives are going to be required to go in, so as they go in and out, they'll knock off any. It's a pervious material on the bottom of that, so you're just making sure we're knocking that off before the road, and then before you go out on Virginia, we have additional paved area, both for traction and for that additional knockoff.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question, Mr. Chair. If that's
Please.
Okay. And then the clarification for the non-vegetative landscape is just the area between the substation and North Virginia. That was the colored portion of that map. We're not requiring any of that around the backside, just the native seed mix on the disturbed areas.
Correct. On our disturbed areas, we're going to require native seed mix that will basically move into that surrounding landscape that we're seeing of rabbit brush and bitter brush and those things. And then that landscape really just being really directed at the front of that property, North Virginia. So as going down North Virginia, you're seeing a landscaped area. You have that berm going up, right, and buffering. And then additionally, we have that wall. So staff feels fairly comfortable that provides a good buffering and kind of a good distance between that. And then I think we're going to have those decorative or artistic elements in there too that will enhance that area.
Okay, and I appreciate that. The comment was that my one, I guess, follow-up comment to that is please do not make one of the decorative items a saguaro. That is completely not indigenous to that area.
I agree. I'm once again a landscape architect, and I am a big promoter of using native landscapes in our native systems.
I saw that pop up, and
I had to say I had the same question. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Draculich, question for you, Brooke. Two quick questions, and mostly just ignorance because substations are new to me. Who owns this land and then the land that's SFA'd and large lot residential to the north of it?
Well, we have the Tumwa tank. Those, I don't have the exact, they're private ownerships at this point. We do not have any residential development on them. They are kind of constrained properties. We start to see this knoll go up there. We have these utilities. Their development is limited on those, but currently there is nothing there. So they are private. They do have the right to come in under that. They also do have the right to come in. We may see zone changes, or we may see other things if other things are more appropriate there.
Okay. And I support this, and so I don't want to come off that way. And so question number 2, when you guys see this come across your desk, we got a substation and then we have SF8, adjacent to it. When you see that, what are your thoughts about approving this, and how does that affect that private owner with those, potential residences or whatever they want to do with that land?
Sure. Obviously, it's a major utility. It does have an impact. We do see these throughout town, though, right? There are infrastructure, and they're required. And so what we try to do in that case is buffer and screen and do what we can to minimize the overall impacts. But they're there. Yeah.
Okay. And that's what I figured. I just wanted to hear your thought process. Thank you.
And why I have you, I'm going to add a little, it's not directly on that, but this, because this is a substation, this will change. The regional map will have to be amended. So what will this see? If we have an approval tonight, we'll go to council, we'll ask for a sponsorship, and then we'll see that go to our regional for that final mapping amendment. I forgot to say that in my thing, but I think it's just important so that everyone understands the process.
Thanks, Brooke. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Monawewa?
Brooke, so the amendment, can you talk about that a little bit? Because, it wasn't mentioned. I didn't see anything. If it's SF8 and this is permissible, which I did look, it is under a conditional use permit, CUP, what would the text amendment have to be?
So this is actually a regional amendment. So our regional looks at our big infrastructure. So they're going to look at that 125 power line as a corridor. They have that mapped, so they're identifying that as some of our major infrastructure. Additionally, when we see these large substations coming in, they want to make sure they're getting those on the map. That takes a map amendment, which is at the governing board. So that will go to our regional governing board and it will be changed here. We will not be changing any of our zoning or the SF8. That stays the same. This is an allowed use within that zone with this conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Please.
If there's no additional discussion. And thank you for that clarification on the regional, Brooke. Case number LDC 23-00045, the Peavine Substation. Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to conditions and recommend that the City Council sponsor the corresponding regional plan amendment to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency. And I can make all of the findings.
Great. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Dracula, should I second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move to agenda item 4.4, case number LDC 23-00029, 3655 Warren Way rezoning. We have a presentation from the applicant.
Good evening. Does that work? Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa Nash with Christie Corp, and I'm here to discuss 3655 Warren Way, and we're asking for a zone change. So we're looking to make a zoning map amendment to rezone 1 acre that is currently single-family residential 3 to multifamily residential 14. We were originally before you in January and asked for a continuance because at that time we'd had one neighborhood meeting and we wanted a chance to go back to the NAB. And as a result, we've amended our application from multifamily 21 to multifamily 14 after input and a lot of consultation with the applicant. So the project site is located just south of West Moana Lane along Warren Way, immediately behind the retail and office buildings. It's currently occupied by a single-family home, and it's surrounded by townhomes and office buildings with businesses and townhomes across the street, across Warren Way. You can see by the zoning, we have PO around us, and we have a mix of MF14, MF21, and further down south, we get back into the SF3 zoning. So our amendment is rezoning from, like we said, SF3 to multifamily 14. We reduced it as a result of the public input and further consideration by the owners. We believe the MF14 zoning is complementary to the multifamily uses in the area. And it is directly adjacent to a multifamily housing to the south, commercial uses along Moana Lane to the north, and it provides a nice transition between those commercial and the residential to the south. And that's it. It's kind of short and sweet, and I'm here for any questions you may have.
Thank you. You do a presentation?
Hello again, Chairman, members of the Commission. Leah Brock, for the record, Associate Planner with Development Services. Second application I'm presenting tonight is the zoning map amendment for Warren Way. The subject 1 acre site is located on the west side of Warren Way between Moana Lane and West Peckham Lane, east of Lakeside Drive. Today's request is for a zoning map amendment to change from single-family residential 3 units per acre to multifamily residential 14 units per acre. Again, the original the original request was for multifamily 21, but the applicant did request that continuance and continued the public outreach and amended their application from the MF 21 to the MF 14. Key issue related to this request is conformance of the base zoning district and compatibility with surrounding uses. Here you can see the master plan land use designation of suburban mixed use. Also a list of conforming base zoning districts. You will see that there are no single family base zoning districts on that list. So this application, should it be approved, will bring the zoning into conformance with the master plan land use designation. Here's a summary of allowed uses. I left MF21 on that chart because there are some MF21 zoning districts in the area. But what I do want to point out there is that most of the uses that are allowed in the 21 are also allowed in the 14, except for that mini warehouse, which could be conditionally permitted in the MF21 and would not be allowed at all in the MF14. Furthermore, here are the development standard differences between the PO, the MF21, MF14, and NC zoning districts. The main concerns expressed by the community were the potential height of the building at the 45 feet under the MF21 with 3 stories. The applicant did address that concern by changing it to MF14 with a maximum height of 35 feet and 2.5 stories, which basically conforms to all of the surrounding districts. Staff has reviewed the findings and does recommend that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the zoning map amendment to the Reno City Council. That concludes my presentation. The recommended motion is on the board, and as always, I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll come back to the commission for disclosures, and we'll start with Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Johnson, familiar with the site and received and read correspondence on this item?
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with the site?
Commissioner Draculich, read and received emails and familiar with the site.
Commissioner Armstrong, a much shorter disclosure this time. I read and received emails and I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Munoz, same disclosures.
Commissioner Velto, same disclosures. We'll open it up to public comment. Do we have any voicemails or request to speak forms?
I do not have any requests to speak forms for this item. We did get correspondence that was distributed to the commission before tonight's meeting. And we do have voicemails that we received before the January 18th meeting that we're going to play right now.
Thank you.
Hi, yes, my name is Marcy Ross, and I'm calling in regards to LDC 23-00029 3655 Warren Way, and I live next door to that property, and I wanted to say I'm not opposed at all to a multifamily residence. I am opposed to MF21. I think a 3-story units would not be uniform to the rest of the neighborhood. We're all MF15. I also think with the new swimming pool, it would just be an eyesore to the community. So please think twice before you put this into process. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name's Andy Marino, and I live at 3677 Warren Way, Unit C. From what I understand, you guys are talking about increasing the footage for, or the amount of people or amount of dwellings that will be allowed at 3655 Warren Way. From what I understand, that's going in front of the commission. That's just a tremendous amount of dwellings on that facility or on that property. I would appreciate it if we could keep that zoned and 2-story, not allowing 3-story units to go in there. It's just, we have enough congestion on Warren Way, plus we have a daycare across the street, and parking is at a premium on Warren. Sometimes we have 3 to 5 cars that can't even park in our own facility. So if somebody could please talk to the Planning Commission that we at 3655 and adjacent would appreciate it if this was not allowed to go through, or if it is allowed to go through, keep it at 2-story. I would appreciate that. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Batten. I live at 3667 Warren Way. I'm calling in regard to 3655 Warren Way, LDC number 2300029. I wanted to say that I think an MF21 is too big for this area. The parking would be quite difficult as it already is. Also not in keeping with the neighborhood. I just wanted to put that out there, and you have a good day.
Hi, my name is Laura Beth Lathrop, and I'm calling in regards to case LDC 23-00029, project name 3655 Warren Way zoning map amendment. I just wanted to call and say that I'm completely against this. I think it's already a very nice, simplified area, and adding 21 units across the street from where I live would make it extremely congested. We don't need that height in that area. So I would just like to express my strongest opinion to not allow the multifamily zoning to go through. Thank you.
That's all the voicemails that we had.
Great. Would anyone in the public like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment, come back to the commission for questions of the applicant. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll ask this of Leah first. So Leah, just to be clear, so we're looking at a zone change.
Yes, we are.
So there's not a project here
Correct.
yet. So what would be, is there a trigger that brings any development here back to another public meeting? In other words, there's a lot of concerns about height, there's a lot of concerns about parking that we're hearing. Is it only if they decide, if this develops as a townhomes as a tentative map, is that the trigger that would bring it back? But if it was just a single development for rent, there's no triggers for residential adjacency or anything like that?
No, because it would be a residential use. I'm trying to think if there's any there. There may be a trigger for over a certain amount of units, but in an MF14, I'm not sure what that trigger would be, but I don't believe so, no.
Okay, so under that scenario, staff has analyzed this zoning, and I guess it sounds like the MF14 is a pretty good compromise. It's what we've had adjacent there, but obviously the concerns that are brought up from a traffic standpoint and things that would be dictated by a specific project There is none of that because this is just a zone change.
You are correct. So things like traffic would be analyzed at the time that they submit for an actual use on the property, whether that be an apartment complex or if it's going to be townhomes and a tentative map.
Right, and that's, so then parking requirements for that are all dictated by code and everything else. So-
Exactly.
So the review that we have on this is just whether the zone change is acceptable.
Exactly. And again, this zone change is to bring it into conformance with the master plan land use designation, which it currently does not conform.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, point of discussion. Just want to go on the record and just say thank you to the applicant for, postponing that last meeting, getting to another NAB, listening to the neighbors. I know maybe everybody's not happy about the change. It seemed like many of them were happy that we changed the density. I personally do support higher density, but it's nice to see a marriage between owners of land and the neighbors around them, and they seem to hit the mark there. So just want to say thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I'll echo Commissioner Draculich's comments on that. I think the density in this area is appropriate. I think they're probably limited in the number of units they can get in there regardless of whether it's MF14 or MF21, but I do appreciate the cap on the height and the stories, which I think is the compromise that was there. So echo his comments, and I'm willing to make a motion if there's no further discussion.
Please.
As I turn to the right page. Case number LDC 23-00029, the 3655 Warren Way rezoning. Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance, and I can make all of the findings.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Villanueva, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you and good luck. Okay, and we'll now move to agenda item 4.5, case number LDC 23-00036, First Congressional Church Zoning Map Amendment. I believe we're going to start with Leah this time.
I'm just going to
All right,
explain
thanks.
everything first, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the commission. For the record again, Leah Brock, Associate Planner with City of Reno Development Services. The last application that I am presenting this evening is a zoning map amendment for the First Congregational Church. The subject 3.4 acre site is located north of the I-80 and northwest of the Rayleighs that is located at the intersection of Keystone and 7th Street. Today's request is for a zoning map amendment to change the zoning from single-family residential 8 units per acre to the public facilities zoning district. To give you a little bit of background on this site, according to the assessor's records, the First Congregational Church of Reno has existed on this site since approximately 1959, and staff has records of continuous use on the site pretty much since that time. Just to be clear, because I received some public comment on this today talking about the church being built in 1959, the surrounding subdivision was built about 10 years in either direction of that. So the surrounding subdivision, parts of it are a little bit older than this, and there were parts of it that are about 10 years newer than this. Key issues related to this request are compatibility of the proposed zoning with the surrounding zoning district of SF8 and conformance with the current zoning code. Allowed uses in the public facilities. So the PF zoning district is intended to provide for public and quasi-public facilities and services. Primary uses include public institutions, cultural centers, religious institutions, government centers, libraries, hospitals, schools, and utility installations. In contrast, the current SF8 zoning district is intended primarily to accommodate single-family residential uses. Here you can see a list of the uses allowed in the public facilities zoning district. All of these uses right here, highlighted in yellow, require a conditional use permit, which would need to be approved through the public hearing process by the Planning Commission. Here, all of these in green would require approval of a site plan review, which is about a 30-day administrative review process. So what I want to point out here is that mostly any use other than residential on this site is going to trigger an additional entitlement. Everything that's in green, because of the residential adjacency, it's going to require a site plan review, and everything in yellow, again, conditional use permit. Development standards for the existing SF8 zoning district and the proposed zoning district are noted in this table. The development standards for the proposed PF zoning district do appear to be consistent with the existing site, and any future development or expansion of uses will require that site plan review, and additional site-specific conditions for compatibility would be applied at that time. The application materials indicate that a portion of the site may be used as a childcare facility in the future. Today's hearing is not about that childcare facility, because that's a use that could only be reviewed and approved or denied should this PF zoning district go through. So I want to point out that you've seen this parcel back in October because the applicant came forward and asked if they could put a school, a Montessori school, on this property. In the SF8 zoning district, a Montessori school, a school, can be approved through the minor conditional use permit process. Because of residential adjacency, a site plan review was also required. In that particular case, the applicant chose to elevate the site plan review and the minor conditional use permit to be a full conditional use permit to be heard and reviewed by this body, which it was. And the Montessori school was approved with a maximum of 24 students. When the applicant started to work toward opening that school, they found that there was a need for a daycare facility in the area. They came to us, we talked about it, but a daycare facility is not a permitted use in the SF8 zoning district. So the only option for them to open that daycare center is to change the zoning to something that would allow them to be able to apply for that. So the application materials indicate that a portion of the site may be used as a child care facility in the future. If this zoning map amendment is approved, a site plan review will be required for any non-residential use that goes into this property or any expansion of existing uses. Vehicle and pedestrian access and circulation will be reviewed at the time that a use is submitted. A traffic impact analysis will be required to be submitted with that site plan review, and at that time, staff will assess the need for on-site and off-site improvements, including but not limited to the addition of sidewalks, traffic signage, and striping in the nearby road network. So again, today we're looking at only the zoning. Any use that comes forward, should this zoning be approved, would then require an additional entitlement. Regarding public comment, I stuck this slide in here today because I received a bunch of public comment pretty much in the last 48 hours. So I wanted to show where that public comment is coming from. And actually, this map is not even inclusive of all the public comment we received because I received some of it in the last few hours. So staff did receive 8 public comments in support, but those comments were not in support of a zoning map change. Those comments were specifically in support of a daycare facility. So those were forwarded to the commission along with the packet. Staff has received opposition specifically to the zoning map amendment because there are concerns about traffic on this roadway. Here you can see where some of that opposition is located. There were a couple of public comments that I received in opposition that I believe are in the area, but didn't provide an address, so I'm not exactly sure where they are, but the ones that did provide addresses, you can see right here. And then these three right here are just off the side of the map, but they are on either Irving Park or on Sunnyside Drive right here. So I can show that 7 of these are relatively close to this facility. In addition, I believe that another 3 or 4 that are right in this area came in this afternoon and just are not on the map. I wasn't able to verify them before I had to come to commission tonight. So, moving on. Staff has reviewed the findings and does recommend that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the zoning map amendment to the Reno City Council. That does conclude my presentation. The recommended motion is on the screen, and as always, I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a presentation from the applicant.
Yes. For the record, my name is Rick Odinsky. I am council president for the First Congregational Church, and thank you for hearing our request for a zoning change. When we came before you last year, we thought that having a Montessori school on the premises would take care of the childcare needs in the area. What we found out was that there was additional needs that we were not equipped to accommodate. That's why we're coming forward to you now. Our church was founded in Reno in 1871. We are the second oldest church in Reno. We moved to the current site in 1957 and built the building that is now housing the Christian education in 1959. Our congregation itself is comprised heavily of retired and current educators. And the focus of our congregation is primarily to advocate for educational opportunities in the community. We actively support the 2 elementary schools in the area through tutoring, food, and book donations. And we also serve as a campus for community crafting clubs, 12-step groups, and various social activities like Girl Scouts, Toastmasters, things like that. We have 27 different groups meeting over the course of a 7-day period. The biggest concern most people seem to have is about the number of cars that will be coming in. The traffic study will answer that question. Right now, the biggest amount of cars we have is on Saturday morning. We have a 12-step group that has approximately 60 to 75 people. And they usually bring about 60 cars in. Our parking lot holds 108 spots. So we generally accommodate everybody without having to resort to off-street parking. I'd be happy to answer any further questions that you have.
Thank you. Okay, we'll come back to the commission for disclosures. Start with Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Johnson, I've previously visited the site and received and read numerous emails.
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with the site, read emails.
Commissioner Dracula, same disclosures.
Commissioner Armstrong, same disclosures.
Commissioner Munoz, same disclosures.
Commissioner Velto, same disclosures, and I don't know how far I live away from here. I live about a half mile away from here, so take that disclosure. We'll now open it up to public comment. I have some request to speak forms. Before I do that, do we have any voicemails?
We do have some voicemails to play. Did you want to do those first?
Sure, please.
Yes, good morning. My name is Scott Hudson, and I own the last house before the First Congressional Church on Sunnyside Drive at 620 Sunnyside Drive. I'm calling in regards to the to the zoning map amendment, LDC 23/00036, the First Congressional Church zoning map amendment. My wife and I had a chance to talk about it last night. We both regard the church as an excellent neighbor. They're friends of ours. We know the pastor, Kate Lambertson, and they've been just a fantastic neighbor. And so we have no opposition. We fully support all of the community service that the church does. They're a wonderful church. And so that's our opinion from 620 Sunnyside. Thank you. Bye. Yes, good morning. I left a very brief message earlier. It didn't come close to my 3 minutes. My name is Scott Hudson. I own the house at 620 Sunnyside Drive, next door to the church, next door to the First Congregational Church with their zoning map amendment. It's LDC 23/00036. You know, we are very supportive of the church. They're, like I said before, they're excellent neighbors. I'm calling from Cedar Falls, Iowa right now, where we live part-time, and we live part-time in our Reno house. The church is an excellent neighbor. We're fully supportive of the project. My wife had only one concern, and that would be if there was going to be sidewalk, you know, cutting into the landscaping on our side of the street. And so that's our only concern. The church does a lot of community service with the Alcoholics Anonymous, and there's already, you know, some smaller scale childcare going on there. They're a wonderful church, and we fully support them. And so anyhow, that's it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Hello, I'm calling in reference to case number LDC 23-00036, First Congregational Church zoning map amendment. My name is Susan Hastings, and I own and live at the residence at 1070 Novelli Drive. That's just down from the intersection of Novelli and Sunnyside, and at the intersection of Mallard Place and Novelli Drive. Historically, the FCC says that it was located here in 1959 and the neighborhood grew up around it. That's not true. Many of the houses in this neighborhood were built before World War II, and the house right across from me was built in 1957. I have lived here for 30 years, and I'm not aware of they say that they're a neighborhood church. I'm not aware of them ever reaching out to the neighborhood, and I've had no contact with them except to complain about their parishioners speeding up and down Novelli Drive, to no avail, I might add. They want to establish a school there, but they have had a school there in the past, and we got it shut down because their excess sewage was leaking into the storm drains. To my knowledge, they have not been able to correct that. Let's talk about the traffic. Novelli Drive is a short street between University Terrace and Sunnyside. It is not a straight street. You do not have clear sight distance for more than about 30 or 40 yards. There are virtually no sidewalks and no parking lanes, and you will find cars parked on both sides of the streets frequently, where when meeting oncoming traffic, one has to pull over into an empty space to allow traffic to pass. And yet people seem to think Novelli Drive and Mallard and Sunnyside are the Reno Grand Prix. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour. Much of the traffic is going either to the church or to Elmcrest School. Parents racing to drop off their kids, racing to get home, and so on and so forth. In the past, I have tried to get speed bumps put in. To no avail. I've tried to get a speed limit reduced, didn't work. I've had RPD out here and stood next to them while cars were going by at 30 miles per hour. I said, go get them, and they said, no, we have to give them 5. Seriously? In addition, in their write-up, the church stressed the fact that they said it would not impact traffic. They said 20 cars. They come in 20 cars in. Well, you know what happens after they're in there? So that's 20 cars in and 20 cars out. That's twice a day. That's 40 cars. Split between Sunnyside, that's 40 cars for Novelli and 40 cars for Sunnyside. Please do not approve this change.
My name is Bob Capurro. I live at 455 Sunnyside Drive, Reno, Nevada. I'm calling concerning the map amendment on LDC 23-00036, First Congregational Church zoning map amended. I am calling to express our opposition to this amendment change. Thank you very much. Bye.
All right, that was it for voicemails. We do have an attendee in the webinar that has their hand raised. Would you like to hear that first or the in-person?
Yeah, let's start with them, just to then we
Okay.
can focus on the in-person.
Okay. Just need to move them over.
Thank you.
Denise, if you can hear us, you can go ahead and unmute. You'll get 3 minutes once you state your name.
Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Rubenfeld. I live very close to the proposed school, Now Church, at 1705 Elmcrest Drive. I'm sorry to not be there in person, not feeling well, and I'm home with the 3-year-old who I hope will eventually attend this school. I wanted to voice my support. I also sent an email. I think from what I heard, that this is really an opportunity for the school or for the church to move forward with the proposal. So I would definitely support that. And I'd say in regards to the concerns about traffic, there are many people who are planning to send their kids to the school who are planning to walk or bike to the school. So I actually don't think it's going to be as much road traffic as the opposers suggest. I also just want to say, excuse me, that we are really in dire need for childcare and school services in this community. I currently drive my son to a school that's 15 minutes away. It really cuts into our day. It's just hard to have a 45-minute commute from your house to your workplace with a long drop off. So I think that supporting community school options are really, really important. And I think that this could actually really improve the traffic situation in the community at large, because lots of us wouldn't be driving our kids 15 minutes to school. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now turn to the folks that are present. First up, I have Stacy Halliday. Perfect. Hallecky. Yes.
Do I have to go first?
You don't have to.
Okay,
Okay, we'll try James Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think we heard a lot of good things about this project and about the church. And certainly we're advocates for education and all that kind of stuff. And like Leah said, the opposition isn't to those kinds of activities, it's to the zoning change. So in the information that I have is from both the application and from the staff report, the Planning Commission staff report. And in the application, it states that basically, because of the delay, then there was, in waiting for the city license, after the conditional use permit was approved, that they had interest in pre-K. So this kind of all revolves around the pre-K, and further in the application, it states that would be limited to, it was like a component limited to 8 additional students. So even that seems, to go through all of this to add 8 pre-K students seems like a lot of work to me, but whatever, that's not the point. In the staff report, and let me back up. The original application was a conditional use permit was approved for 24 students. And I assume that was based on some kind of a density of the existing facility. So there's two parts to the existing facility. Part of it is already designed for school because it was a Montessori school previously, and that's 1,600-ish square feet. So that's where the 24 students came from, I believe. So then in the Planning Commission staff report, it says basically if the other part of that building, which in total is 7,000 something square feet, were purposed for schools, then it could support up to 120 students. So for us, it feels a little bit like, kind of the tip of the iceberg. It's like, in one case, it's an additional 8 on top of, I'm not sure if that 8 is on top of the 24 or if that would be in corporate of the 24. Does that mean my time's up? Oh, okay. I was gonna really go under 3 minutes. But so anyway, that zoning change then opens up not only, that capacity to increase, fourfold-ish, but then there's some other parts in the general principles that say that they might work with local farm organizations, provide a food bank on the premises and whatnot. So again, it's kind of, this 8 additional pre-K students and then something completely different, So again, for us, it feels a little like a Trojan horse, right? I mean, it's just like we're expecting, maybe one thing that's a good thing, but then a lot of things that could, not be so great for the area. And again, it all boils down to the traffic. And so that's my concern is just the zoning part. So, okay.
Thank you. Kimberly Matheson.
Hi, thank you. I'm just going to read my letter that I sent.
Can you bring the microphone down a little bit? And don't forget to state your name,
How's
please.
that? My name's Kimberly Matheson. Good. I'm just going to read the letter that I sent you. It says, I strongly oppose the rezoning of the First Congregational Church on Sunnyside Drive. I'm a resident on Sunnyside Drive, and as an elementary school teacher, I understand the need for quality daycare in Reno. But this street cannot accommodate the large numbers that are being proposed. Even now, it's difficult, especially during the morning commute, to turn onto Keystone from Sunnyside and Novelli Drive due to the increased traffic from recent lane changes made to Keystone. Adding over possibly 100 more cars from the school or other entities that would qualify for this rezoning to this congestion is untenable. In addition, my neighbors and I have spoken to the church several times over the years about cars that continually speed down Sunnyside to the church. We've expressed our concerns about this to the city as well, and more cars will only add to this problem. I understand that a small school has recently been approved to open at this church, and this seems like a reasonable compromise for this neighborhood. But rezoning for facilities that can accommodate over 100 students is not a good plan for this area. And again, as a neighbor who will be directly affected by this change, I strongly oppose the proposal to rezone. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Todd Renwick.
Good evening, Chair, members of the commission. My name's Todd Renwick. I am also a resident of this area. I live right on that corner, 90 Irving Park Circle. I don't want to reiterate what people have already said, and I certainly don't want to hinder a pathway to more education, but I think that there's a broader problem here that I think we're trying to address to you, and that's the traffic issues that we're seeing. I am a little confused on, are we going daycare or are we going school here? I have a concern that this might be open the door here, but then it's really a sliding glass door that there's a bigger potential here for more traffic, more people or students, however you want to phrase it. But these traffic issues are there. I sit at my corner window in my house with my wife when we drink coffee on Saturday mornings, and I can tell you that it is entertainment. It's scary entertainment at times with the speeds that we see, no disregard for stop signs. and the sheer volume that comes in at a short window of time. There's only one way into this campus. This was referred to as a campus tonight. And what does that tell you? It's a large property, and there's plans for it to be larger. Having one way in and one way out is a big concern of mine for that traffic flow. So again, I think this is something we want you to consider. Hear us, please, when we're telling you of our concerns here. The concern's not the school. The concerns are the change in the zoning and potentially what we're going to be left with as residents of this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hallecky, it is your turn.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for hearing me. I'm just going to read my letter. First of all, I'm Stacy Hallecky, and my husband and I have lived on Sunnyside Drive for 28 years. So we've seen many changes come back and forth. We're longtime homeowners, and we will be directly impacted negatively by the rezoning of the church property from SF8 to public facilities use. The proposed change represents a significant departure from the single-family oriented nature of the neighborhood. This change will also set a precedent for future rezonings to be approved in our area. Having ourselves been local parents and now grandparents, we understand and appreciate the need for preschool services in our growing community. The Sunnyside Church has laudably facilitated various children's education and care services over the years. However, these have been of limited, appropriate size with minimal impact to our neighborhood. Such is the case presently, and it is acceptable and feasible. However, what is being proposed now is a potential more than quadrupling the numbers. Consequently, of greatest concern is the negative impact the project will have upon the traffic on our street. Sunnyside Drive serves as the main arterial from the church to Keystone Avenue. It is also the arterial for both directions, most of the Royal Heights developments to Keystone. Since the city's reduction of Keystone to one lane, they put those bike lanes in there, which has messed everything up. Such in the case presently and is acceptable and feasible. However, what is being proposed now is a potential more than quadrupling the numbers. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. It is also the arterial for most of the Royal Heights development to Keystone. Since the city's reduction of Keystone to one lane, both directions, we already are experiencing cars backed up our street at peak traffic times attempting to access Keystone. A possible 100 more cars twice each day at those peak times will only exacerbate the problem for the existing residents and be a source of frustration for the new users. So again, I want to reiterate, it is nothing opposed to having a preschool there or an educational facility. It's the amount of the traffic that would increase on our street. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Would anyone else in the public like to speak on this item? Yes, sir. If you could please fill out a request to speak form. You can do that after you speak. Okay. But we just want to make sure we get one.
I see many of my neighbors here tonight. Sorry, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. The church behind us, they've been a good neighbor.
Excuse me, can you please state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, Frederick Woody. Church behind us has been a good neighbor. I'd like for that to continue. My motivation is a little self-preserving. I live in the 1490 Royal Drive. I think I'm the closest neighbor here to the property we're talking about. I have an empty lot behind my house which butts up to the church that we're talking about doing the construction on. And I realized that someday they would probably build a house behind our house, but right now it's an empty lot, and I was hoping you would never put a 3-story building there. Our view out our back windows and doors are magnificent with the Sierra Nevadas, and I'd hate to see that go away. Not to mention the traffic it would bring, but mostly I just was in shock that there were going to be such a large building there. I had no idea. I texted my neighbor while I was sitting back there, and he's the one that would affect the most. His neighbor he lives right next to us on Royal Drive, and his property backs up to exactly where the construction would be. And I asked him if he knew they were putting a 3-story building there, they wanted to. And he said, no, not at all. He said that, tell them that the notice was deceptive, was his words. He's a local engineer. I guess we should have communicated with him better about that. Maybe he would have been here. But that's all I have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yes, please come up.
My name's Elizabeth Flaherty, and I addressed you last time when they asked about the Montessori school. And the concern was the traffic, at least put in speed bumps. We tried to get that implemented, and we haven't. I invite you to come and see our street, to walk our street, and to be there on a Saturday morning, Tuesday night, at the times when those facilities are in use. He said that the street isn't impacted for the Saturday morning meeting. It is. I live at 571. I'm 3 houses down, and they park in front of our house. And I don't care if they park in front of our house, but I do care about them using it as a speed run. We've asked them to hold their speeds down. My significant other has gone to the meetings and asked them to go to do it. It lasts for a while and then it starts again. And I ask you, would you want to live on a street where you have 100 potential more cars in a situation like this? It's a nice, quiet development that's been that way for a long time. We'd like to see it stay that way. We have a lot of people and kids and their dogs walking along that area, and it's put a lot of people at danger. And I don't want to see it even created more of a problem. So I'm asking you, come walk our streets. Come down there on a Saturday morning. Come see what is going on. That's the only way you're going to understand why we feel the way we do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Come back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Villanueva?
I have a question for staff. Leah. So Lisa, the last time this applicant came in front of us, they asked for the school, and there was the cap, my understanding, I think you said that, for 24. If we do the zone change, I am looking at this table that was provided in the packet. It says that schools are permitted by right. What happens to that 24, that cap?
So, Leah Brock for the record. As of right now, the 24 cap would continue to be in effect because any expansion of an existing approved use will have to go back through the site plan review process. So, because of the residential adjacency. So, they are approved for 24 students right now. If they're going to increase that capacity, it'll have to go back through a site plan review process, which will include notification to all of the neighbors. And it could potentially be an administrative decision, or it could be escalated and come back to the Planning Commission.
Okay, so that's the case, even though it says it's permitted, because of the residential adjacency.
Exactly. So any expansion of current uses or any new uses except for residential will have to go through a review process and receive an entitlement.
Will you please, did a good job with that map early. Can you bring that, not map, it was like a spreadsheet of sorts with
yeah, the table.
Yeah. Okay, so the top does not require them coming back, but only but those things on the bottom would require that they come back. So Just looking at this map. So, okay, so you pretty much listed them all because that's what I captured as well.
Yeah, I think I covered pretty much everything that was on the table of allowed uses.
Okay. Okay. All right. I do have more questions, but I'll pass for right now. Thank you. Pass it along.
Mr. Chair, I apologize, but somebody in the Zoom meeting also raised their hand while our last public commenter was speaking. Would it be okay if we brought them over?
Please.
Okay, Kelly, you can unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll get 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Hello, Chairman and members of the Commission. Thank you for your time. My name is Kelly Brescotter. My family and I live at 590 Sunnyside on the southeast corner of Sunnyside and Novelli. Our home has been in our family since it was built by my husband's father in 1961, and 2 of my husband's aunts still live less than a quarter mile away. So we're very invested in our home and our community, and we love it over here. I earlier submitted a comment in opposition to this, to the proposal earlier this afternoon, but however, I would actually like to rescind that comment and change it to in support. My husband and I are educators, and we know how essential quality childcare is and how hard it is to find. The church and the school also both promote and support anti-bias, anti-racism, unity, compassion, and helping others, which looking into their websites and what their programs are about, and the church has always, I'm not a member of the church, but the church has always been in support of our larger community. These are values that my family supports and that we would like to continue supporting. The concerns about traffic, I am very concerned about these. There's no stop signs, there's speeding, there's sidewalks, everything that all of my neighbors have mentioned. But I think we can find solutions to these. And I think if we work together, that definitely there's solutions out there. And I would strongly encourage the city, like they said, please come down, conduct a study down here. We've all called multiple times for many of these issues, and I think they can be fixed. So again, I support this, and I look forward to working with the First Congregational Church, the Montessori School, and the City of Reno so that we can find solutions to increase safety in our neighborhood and provide quality childcare. Thank you.
Thank you.
It doesn't appear that anyone else in the Zoom meeting has raised their hand, so I think we're good.
Okay, we'll close public comment again. No worries. It's back to the commission if there's any questions.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Commissioner Draculich, question for you, Leah. It's kind of a 2-part traffic thing, and I hate to make you go backwards. So our previous meeting, just remind me, I couldn't remember, did we have a traffic analysis done?
We did not because it was such a minimal use, only 24 students. And there were already existing uses on the property that far exceeded that. So our engineering department did not require it at that time.
Okay, glad I remember that. And then I know we're not voting on the potential of what this could become later, but I am going to ask you anyway. If it does go to a daycare, will we be triggering a traffic analysis then?
Yes.
Okay. Anything you want to note on that that's notable for the room? I mean, obviously it'll come back in front of this board and we'll have a chance to review that, but go ahead and speak on it if you'd like.
Yes. So at this time, we're not exactly sure what the proposed daycare facility would look like. I did reach out to, I am blank on the name of the agency right now, but basically I found out that they would allow 1 student per 35 square feet. And then there is other requirements there about outside and how big the outside facility needs to be and number of bathrooms and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's hard for me to speculate at this point what those numbers would actually look like. Plus, if they receive the zoning map amendment, they could theoretically build additional buildings on this 6-acre site, and we just don't know at this point. However, staff completely understands that there is an issue with traffic on these street networks right here. We understand that it's being used as a cut through. We understand that there may not be appropriate striping or signage. I went down there, I've been down to the site several times. I have sat on the street right outside of this and watched the traffic go by. I've watched people blow through the stop signs. And I believe that when a use comes forward for this and we get that traffic impact analysis, that we can require the necessary improvements on that street to make it overall a safer place. One of the other issues that we have too is that the sidewalk does not extend all the way to the church building. It stops a few properties short. So even the one comment that was in support about, people are going to walk or ride their bikes to this site, we have to, that roadway network has to have some improvements before it becomes a safe place for a daycare or for a larger school. And staff is going to work with the applicant on whatever uses come forward, whether this zoning map amendment gets approved, to resolve those issues on that street.
Mike Michelle has raised his hand, if you would like to hear him speak too.
Please, go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Commission. Commissioner Draculich, I was at that Planning Commission meeting when this previous application came in. And I had made the comment that we would commit to doing an internal traffic safety analysis of that street. And I would commit that we will do the same in conjunction with this current application.
Thank you for reminding us, Mike. I appreciate it. I do remember you being there, and thanks for reminding of your comments. Appreciate that. It's it for now for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, I have some questions. Could you possibly pull up the slide with that Commissioner Villanueva was asking about?
Yes.
Okay, so everything that you have in green would be an allowed use if we were to vote in favor.
With an approval of a site plan review. So again, that's notification to all the neighbors within 750 feet and an administrative review of that application. And that would be, daycare center would go through that process as well.
And what is a commercial laboratory?
It's a laboratory. I just have it listed under commercial uses.
Okay. Can you help me understand, what would that, I'm not a science guy.
I'm not sure. I have to see if we actually have a definition for it under Reno Municipal Code. I took those uses directly out of our table of allowed uses, so I'd have to see if there's a corresponding definition.
Okay. So I guess I'm looking at some of the findings specific to the zoning map amendment, and the two I kind of want to hear your feedback on are the finding of promoting health and general welfare and ensuring protection of existing neighborhoods and communities. Can you kind of walk me through those two? So promoting health and general welfare and ensuring protection of existing neighborhoods.
Yes. So promoting general health and welfare. Would be supporting a longstanding existing use that serves the community. As the applicant stated, they do offer benefits to this community, including their multi-purpose facility that offers to local clubs, and I believe it has hosted some elementary school functions and potential food banks and things like that. But furthermore, let me look at my findings here. I'm sorry, can you repeat that first one you were asking me about?
Yes, sorry, I said them quickly. So the first one was promoting health and general welfare, and the second one is ensuring protection of existing neighborhoods and communities.
So I think that promoting health and general health and welfare and I'm sorry, what was the verbiage on that? The
Protecting existing neighborhoods.
protecting the existing neighborhoods kind of go hand in hand with this. Again, as a planner for the city of Reno, I understand that there is an ongoing issue at this time with that roadway network. And I believe that it is through entitlements and conditions of approval that we can resolve those concerns. So it is staff's opinion that the concerns that have been expressed can be resolved through this process.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Jason, thoughts?
Jason Garcia Lebu, Planning Manager for the record. Just to follow up on what Leah just said, for the commission and the audience, everything in the green and yellow will have conditions of approval. So those are things to mitigate impacts like traffic or like screening or like other issues that come up. So regardless if it's administrative or it becomes back before this commission, the city has protective measures in place to mitigate that. And to the second point, I did quickly look up and I did find the definition of laboratory if you want it.
Sure.
So it's a facility for conducting medical or scientific research, investigation, testing, or experimentation, but not facilities for the manufacture or sales of products, except as incidental to the main purpose of the laboratory. The definition also includes labs for the manufacture of dentures and prosthetists. So with that, again, that use would trigger some type of review through the city, and that would be conditioned if something like that were presented to the city. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually want to follow up on this line of discussion because I think it's a good one. But the site plan review process, which I understand is administrative. My question on that, and Jason, you mentioned that there are findings on there. When it's a public review like this, where it's a major conditional, use permit, something along those lines, there is a staff report that is put together and discussed at this meeting, and there is an opportunity for the public to read that in anticipation of this meeting and, comment on that. What is the process for a site plan review that doesn't have an actual public meeting? There is a notification, but then after, does the card go out just saying this will be established on this date and all comments need to be received? Or is there an actual process of there will be conditions put together at a certain date that people can actually look at before there is a decision that is made?
So the site plan review process, the notification is sent out when we first receive the application. Staff is given 2 weeks to review that application. And it's not just planning staff, but it would be all of our technical review agencies. So that would be fire and engineering and Reno Police and code enforcement and any other of the other agencies that we send that out to. Then staff collects those comments, performs the analysis, writes something very similar to a staff report, but it's a decision letter, crafts those conditions of approval, meets with the applicant, goes over what that looks like, and then submits it to management for review and approval. So to answer your question, that staff report and those conditions of approval are not available to the public until after it's either approved or denied.
Okay, so you see where I'm going with this comment, that we have heard a promise this evening from the engineering department that they are going to work with the roadway network, which I appreciate, and I know that that would be a part of any one of these conditions, but it seems like the process for all of those things in green, most of which are the more likely things that could go there, do not, under any current situation, require an opportunity for the public to review. And that, I think, I have a fundamental problem with in a situation like this, because it is so tied up in, it's not that I'm, and I will state for the record, I'm not concerned that staff is not paying attention to what's going on there. And I know that staff has some issues and will be incorporating things like that into this. but I'm very concerned that we have a very engaged immediate neighborhood that has expressed concerns for time, over time, that is potentially after this meeting not going to have the opportunity to review what we believe is going to be the next step in this process, which I think I have just kind of taken us into discussion rather than a question, so I apologize for that, but that was, you answered my question, and that was where my follow-up was. So thank you for answering the question, and I don't know if you have a follow-up to what I was saying.
I just want to point out too that any administrative review process can be elevated to a review process that would come before this body at the request of the applicant. So,
Actually, real quick, what's the appeal process for a site plan review? Does it go directly to council or does it come here?
Council.
Okay, and at that point in time, it would be a review of the findings letter and the letter of approval.
That is correct.
So I guess to take this as next step, if the process is followed, the opportunity that the public would have to weigh in on any project there would actually be through an appeal of a letter, an administrative decision, should there be an issue with what's in the administrative decision.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I can tell you too, from staff's perspective, administrative reviews of some of these just may not be appropriate because of the public comment that comes in or the concerns that come up in it. And staff may end up recommending that the applicant elevate that request and have it heard by this body. So that's always a possibility as well.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes.
I think we'll take that. I'll bring it back to discussion at that point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Villanueva.
Leah, you mentioned not you, but staff through the administrative process has 2 weeks to, what does it, make a decision or get back or?
To analyze the project. So we send it out for review, and then basically staff and all of the agencies that review it are given 14 days to review that application and respond back to me or respond back to staff with what their comments are on that project. Then staff essentially then has 2 weeks from there to analyze those comments and put together a staff report and those conditions of approval.
Does it always get done in 2 weeks? Or has there ever been instances where it was not done in 2 weeks?
There are
timeline.
There are, but because we have statutory guidelines there where we have to complete it within a certain number of days, if we don't get yes, there have been incidents. But if we don't get comments, if the planner doesn't get comments from an agency that they know they need comments from, it's our job to reach out to that agency and say, hey, we need comments from you on this.
Okay. The reason I bring that up is because I'm looking at proposed statutory changes to, I think, that specific thing where staff doesn't get back, there's automatic approval. And so, and I'm looking at this legislation. It's not law now, it may be law in the future, we don't know yet. But that could potentially pose issues. It would basically say, it doesn't come to planning, it goes to staff, but if staff drops the ball, potentially, it could they automatically kind of get that permission and can move forward. Not law now, may never be law, but that is kind of my concern with the administrative process and that overview, especially with the limited ability for citizen participation. So how often would you say that happens where staff doesn't get?
So let me be clear about this. I don't think I've ever seen a case in my 8 years in planning where staff has not met that deadline. Okay. We may have to meet that deadline without comments from an agency that we might need, but we would incorporate that into our analysis and say, and usually we would put a condition of approval that says we're going to need comments from this before we can proceed with this.
Okay.
Staff doesn't just fail to respond.
Okay. That's good to know.
So if the Jason Garcia-LeBoux, planning manager, jumping in again, just to follow up on that, sometimes we have specific cases that require extra studies or other things. So we work closely with the applicant and get a time extension as part of that process so that traffic studies or other components can be finished as part of that.
Yeah.
So But for the most part, we try to stick to that 30-day review turnaround. So if they submit a complete application, usually that's met. Otherwise, some of those more challenging projects or more detailed projects or that need additional studies might be a special exception.
Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate it, Leah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question off of that topic, but I want to circle back because I heard a question during public comment that I just wanted to get clarified. Leah, I know one of our public commenters was talking about a new building on a current vacant lot. I know there's a lot just to the east of here that is vacant. Is that in any way tied to this project?
No, that lot is not owned by the applicant, and it's the first I've heard of that.
So-
But that lot would not be part of this zoning map amendment. It still is SF8 and would need to meet all those SF8 guidelines, which is not going to permit a 3-story building.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get that clarified because that was my understanding, but I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you. Oh, Commissioner Draculich, apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just trying to formulate my question. I mean, ultimately, I'm sitting here trying to work to find a solution. I know that's not always perfect and easy. And I guess taking into Commissioner Villanueva and Commissioner Johnson's comments, I guess my understanding is we have a lot of, we're going to get to some agencies, staff's going to have some analysis. My question is, so when do this, is there a mechanism where the citizens can participate like their NAB, and would they have time to do that if the applicant came forward with a proposal?
The neighborhood meetings aren't required in an administrative review process. But again, it is fairly common that administrative review processes are extended or elevated to the Planning Commission. So that under those circumstances, yes, it would then go to NAB, and community outreach may be required. It just depends on what that request is.
Okay, and I'm not convinced that's the solution. I'm working through this as much as I can. So if anybody else wants to jump in on that, please go ahead.
Yes, and this might be, I don't know who this is a question for. Do we have the ability to say that anything on this project will come to Planning Commission as opposed to being purely administrative?
No, you can't condition a zoning map amendment.
Okay. Not through condition, but is there the ability for us to direct staff in some other way? The answer might be no, I'm just asking.
I can't think of a way where we could do that, but I do understand where you're coming from.
Sorry.
Oh, please, Commissioner.
So it's just to piggyback on that real quick. Is there a way to do a condition of approval for the applicant to elevate the process?
Theoretically, I'm trying to work through that. Because if the applicant came forward with a request for an entitlement, we can add conditions of approval, but there might be, I'm not sure if you can add conditions of approval that are specific to the site rather than being specific to the project.
Yeah, I think I have more questions on that.
No, that's where I'm getting. If I don't know, Jason, if you can weigh in on that.
So Jason Garcia, LeBou, Planning Manager for the record. Leah's correct. With zoning maps, we can't condition that aspect of it, but we will have the ability through the entitlement process, whether it be administrative or back before this commission, to put conditions of approval on that. So at this point, with the request before us, we can't condition that, but future entitlements for proposals such as the proposal that was discussed, but it's not before this commission today, that could potentially be conditioned. But staff is definitely understanding what you're saying, where you're going, yeah.
Chair, I have a question. Aaliyah, this is a silly question, but I am trying to find a solution. So that's why I'm asking it. So I see here that one of the permissible uses is a home childcare. I understand this is obviously not a home. Is there a situation where we could see a church like this qualify under something like that, a home childcare center?
I'd have to look at what the definition is, but I want to say that home childcare centers allow for between 1 and 6 children, I believe.
I saw one it said that was one of them, and then it said 7 to 12. But again, I don't even know if that would apply in this case because it is a church. But
yeah, I think you'd have to have a residence first. Although, I don't know. I'd have to look at the table of allowed uses.
So Jason again. Under our childcare definition, it actually says any place, home, institution, business, or establishment in which children are received, cared for, or maintained for any period of time with or without compensation. A childcare center does not include accessory in-home childcare uses as defined in this chapter. So.
does not include accessory. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, maybe we'll go into discussion.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair,
Johnson.
I'll jump in on this. So there's a couple things that are rattling through my head. We have the applicant here this evening. He's hearing not only from us, he's hearing from his neighbors. There's certain issues there. So I think there's a to Leah's point, the next step could certainly be elevated at his request. The second thing that's rattling around in my head, and it's not our purview, but this is also a recommendation to City Council, which is always a discussion point at this body where we are not the ultimate arbiter when it comes to the decision of zoning maps. So both of those things, I think, moving towards, having an opportunity for what happens here be looked at by those most impacted by it adjacent. I think there are some avenues for that. In looking at stepping back from the very specific item that we're looking at here and to the point of all of the uses that are there, I think it is pretty clear that what we are looking at on something like this, the one use that jumps out that is not allowable in the current zoning, but in the zoning we're looking for, is truly the child care center. And I think that, as it's been said, it's not what's in front of us tonight, but even just taking a look at the different uses, that is the one that makes sense for the reason for this zone change. And when I think about a child care center, I think about this not in the area of a school. A school could actually go in there now with a minor conditional use permit per the existing zoning. So it's interesting that, they're asking for the zoning, meaning, in my mind, it's not a school. It is a daycare facility, which having a traffic study done will be good, but the traffic for a daycare facility is not the same as the traffic for a school. The timing is different. It's all over the map. It's when people are going to work, lunchtime, early pickup, late pickup. It's not the same regimented schedule. So I think there's a lot of aspects of that need to be looked at. And I think the one, again, the findings, and I appreciate Commissioner Velta bringing that up, the one finding that from hearing this evening, from looking at the area that I have circled, I wanted to talk about was the idea from a zoning standpoint in terms of mitigating traffic impacts. And as much as we've discussed tonight, the public input into what we're doing, we also heard from city staff a commitment to review that area and look at it, in my mind, regardless of an entitlement that happens here. So, and I think with an entitlement, it becomes even more specific where we can be looking at what that traffic level is. So as much as I have a a concern at any time when we're doing a zoning map and not knowing what we have there. I think in this case, I'm hearing a lot from staff. I'm seeing the applicant. I'm hearing from that there are, the safeguards may not be what I want them to be, but I think there is some at least point of discussion here and an understanding of what the community and this body is interested in. So that discussion was long and rambling, but you all expect that from me. So with that, I will turn it, Mr. Chair, to somebody else.
Commissioner Munoz?
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz, for the record. It's one thing that we heard over and over and over and over again, not only traffic, but that the church is a good neighbor. Even the people that are complaining about traffic have said the church is a good neighbor. And I don't believe, and this is my opinion, I don't believe he's going to come in and try and obliterate the neighborhood with 200 cars in the morning and 200 cars in the afternoon. And I from what they're saying and what they've said about him, or what they've said about the church and what they have presented before us, that's not the purpose. It's not what they're looking to do. And again, we don't get to look at that, unfortunately. And I think we all asked very specific questions on safeguarding the neighborhood. And I think maybe in my mind that's unnecessary, because I know the city and staff is safeguarding the neighborhood. I know that's something that's important to them too. So I know I'm comfortable making a recommendation to City Council for them to make this amendment. I'm okay with it. So, and I know there's a lot of steps before something comes in here that's going to have a detrimental impact to this neighborhood. And I believe the city does have the best interests of the neighborhood at hand. So I am comfortable making this decision.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Draculich, yeah, I echo what Commissioner Munoz says, and also Commissioner Johnson. Ultimately, I see a good faith applicant doing great things for the community, providing a need with the daycare. I got a 10-year-old. I remember those days. It was pretty brutal. Also, I understand the concerns in the neighbors, and we've got commitments, well, really twice from our traffic engineer, also from the city, and enough eyes on this. I feel comfortable that, once we put this little baby step forward, that each step should be taken with care and working in good faith. So I would support this recommendation.
Commissioner Villanueva, yeah, this is a tough one because I think it's a child care. I mean, obviously, we're not looking at whether or not this is for child care. We're looking at a zoning amendment, which is what makes it difficult, because I do think, child care facilities are needed, and it is, understandably, this is a one way in, one way out, and a lot of folks are using this as a way to cut through to get to Keystone. But today we're looking at whether or not to turn this, zoning into public facilities, which is really hard. I kept going back and forth because the only thing we need out of that zone is the child care facility, but it opens up the door to this whole other, all these other things that could potentially go there. But I think I am comfortable with what staff said as far as their review process, and I agree with my fellow commissioners here. I think the church is making a good faith effort in good faith seeking a path to just open up this child care facility without some hidden agenda to have a full-blown school here. So it's tough because I don't feel comfortable necessarily turning this into public facilities, but I do find that I can make the findings, and so I am going to be in support of this. But so, anyways, that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Armstrong?
I guess to chime in with what everyone else said, this is a tough decision for me. I respect the perspective of the community members. I can make the findings for the zoning amendment, and I think it's important that we're careful not to look too far ahead, in terms of what could be. But I do believe that the applicant will act in good faith. The city council as well as city staff have, good intentions in mind. They will safeguard the city. Personally, in my opinion, I would like to, maybe see the applicant elevate whatever it is they want to do in the future to a public hearing so we can flesh out the details more and address some of the concerns of the community. Whether or not that happens, I can't say, but I think it's a reasonable ask, at least as a citizen in Reno. So thank you.
I respect all of your opinions. I think you all have very good perspectives. I think I see this a little bit differently. I'm a little concerned to evaluate what the purpose is going to be as opposed to just the change. And there's some allowed uses which, while we'll be able to condition them, they'd still be allowed. And those allowed uses are a little concerning to me. I guess I struggle to parse those statements with the fact that we gave a conditional use permit which runs with the land for a school. But I am a little concerned with changing the zoning, especially given that there's another parcel nearby. And when we change this zoning, that parcel is going to be able to point to the change in zoning and say it's now compatible because there's no longer a reliance on like a grandfathered use, but now the zoning's actually changed. So I'm a little concerned about how that may play out. Yeah, but I guess I just struggle with what the allowed uses are, and I can't necessarily focus as much on what we know is going to happen. I'm just more concerned about how it'll change. But again, I respect all your thoughts, and it makes a lot of sense. And this is a tough decision, but that's kind of where I end up on this one. And with that, if we want to do does anybody have a motion?
Commissioner Draculich, I'm ready to make a motion.
Please.
In the matter of case number LDC 23-00036, First Congregational Church Zoning Map Amendment. Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance, and I can make all the findings.
A motion, do we have a second?
Commissioner Munoz, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I was going to ask for discussion before the vote, just as a follow-up, but not necessary. I was basically going to comment on your statement, which I think is actually directly in line with the comments that we have said. We've talked about a very specific finding, but the concerns that have been raised are about the process for whatever goes there, because all of those uses require the same site plan review process. So whether it's a childcare or a laboratory or a, whatever those are, music studio, they all require that same level of review, and I think we're all concerned whether that's enough. So, again, you can call for the vote. I apologize for messing with the request for the discussion. So
I like this cadence for the vote. So thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. All opposed, nay. So the motion carries 5-1. Thank you and good luck. So sorry. I don't know if I voted. Oh. Okay.
AB 213. We related to our findings.
Ready to head out?
It doesn't, no, it's the Assembly Warigi.
Okay, we'll move to agenda item number 5, which is the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report.
I was going to let you do it as the newest member, but
Oh.
I can run through it, no problem. I wrote it down beforehand, so.
Please.
There were several, it was a quick meeting, but there were several items. Regional approved the Crampton Street zone change, which came through this body. That was the City of Reno one. Everything else was a Washoe County change. 2 items of note, the RTC did come forward. They had a change on their their plan. They actually updated and amended the plan to move some work in the North Valleys up to have it occur sooner than was actually originally intended. It was a Washoe County item, but it pertains to some of the traffic there. And then the only other item, they are moving forward with the TMRPA Public Infrastructure Plan, or the PIP as they call it, which I think that's a little weird. So it's a Public Infrastructure Plan where regional is basically contacting all of the stakeholders and putting together actual regional-wide data with respect to infrastructure. So looking at planning for water, sewer, roadways, utilities, and schools, which I'm not quite sure how schools fits into that, which I brought up during the meeting, but they're looking to hire a consultant to do this and bring documentation together, and I'm sure that as that moves forward, we'll probably end up with a presentation here at this body. So those were the items on regional.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6, staff announcements.
Hello, Commission. Jason Garcia LeBou, Planning Manager for the record. At the March 15th meeting, it looks like we have 3 projects that will be heard. 2 of those will be conditional use permits and 1 a tentative map. Also on the list, just to let the Commission know, the Green Acres Storage Project was appealed. So that will be going to council in April, and we received that appeal request today. And also on the next agenda, staff will be, Grace will be coming to the commission to discuss the annual report for regional. So that's everything on the staff end. Let me know if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items? Okay. We'll move to public comments. Do we have requests to speak forms or voicemails?
Nothing for this item.
Thank you. Seeing nobody will close public comment. And is there a motion for adjournment?
Adjourn. Commissioner Villanueva, motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.